For 3 years, I had been secretly involved with my boss, Charles. Last night, we were together at my apartment, but just moments ago, he announced in front of everyone that he was engaged. His fiancée, Caroline, had only been working as a secretary at the publishing house for 2 weeks. Unable to contain my emotions, I stormed into his office. Without thinking, I grabbed the coffee from his desk and threw it at him. He managed to block most of it with a file, but the dark liquid still splattered across his pristine white shirt. The same shirt I had lovingly dried and placed beside his pillow that morning. Charles scowled. "Bianca, have you lost your mind?" Fuming, I slammed my hand on his desk. "What is this, Charles? Do you think I'm a fool?" He calmly wiped at his shirt with a tissue before tossing it into the trash. Finally, he met my gaze. "Bianca, we agreed from the start that if we ever ended things, it would be with dignity." My eyes stung with unshed tears as I fought to keep my voice steady. Dignity? That's what we agreed on if we ended things mutually. But you cheated, and yesterday you told me you had a surprise for me. Unbothered, Charles leaned back in his chair. A $4 million apartment and $1 million in cash. Isn't that a surprise? I froze. $5 million. It would take me decades to earn that much. Months ago, hearing such a figure might have thrilled me. Now, all I wanted to do was cry. My hands clutched at his shirt, wrinkling the fabric as tears threatened to spill. "I get it now," I whispered bitterly. "What we had, it wasn't love. It was just a transaction." Charles paused before letting out a cold laugh. "So you really are that naive?" Later, I found myself in the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face in a desperate attempt to calm down. The bloodshot veins in my eyes and Charles's cutting words, replaying in my mind, left me with a throbbing headache. I didn't even notice Caroline appear behind me until she spoke. She wore a pure, almost childlike dress that emphasized her fresh-faced appearance, though her figure lacked fullness. "What did you say to Charles in his office?" she asked sharply. I dried my face, glaring at her. "Why would that matter to you?" "I'm his fiancée," she snapped. "If another woman is hovering around Charles, of course I have every right to ask." "I outrank you in this company," I shot back. "You have no right to interrogate me." I couldn't let her look down on me. Not this woman who had just stolen my boyfriend. I tried to brush past her, but suddenly she dropped to the floor, sitting awkwardly in a dramatic sprawl. "Bianca, why did you push me?" she cried loudly. Her voice carried down the hallway, where the bathroom door was wide open. Colleagues passing by stopped, their attention drawn to her performance. Caroline clutched her arm, her face contorted in mock pain. "I know you have feelings for Charles," she said, her tone trembling. "But he and I have known each other since we were kids. Our families arranged this marriage. I won't let you take him from me." Her words stung, but the final blow was delivered in a near whisper meant only for me. "Didn't you always say Charles would never fall for someone like you?" someone so ordinary. I clenched my fists. Her act was transparent, but it was working. The pitying looks from onlookers were almost unbearable. I stepped forward, ready to confront her, when a blur of movement passed me. Charles appeared, pushing me aside as he rushed to help Caroline. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "I'm fine," she said, her voice trembling with faux innocence. "I'm sure Bianca didn't mean it." "Stop playing the victim," I muttered. Charles's expression hardened as he turned to me. "That's enough, Bianca. If you don't want to work here anymore, leave." His words hit me like a slap. Everyone stood frozen, whispering as the scene unfolded. While I had always denied the rumors about us, it was no secret that Charles and I were closer than most. But now, the man who had whispered my name last night was telling me to leave in front of everyone. Humiliated, I fled to our shared apartment, where I cried until I was numb. Grabbing my journal, I began listing everything I had done for him and everything he had done for me. One page overflowed with my love and sacrifices. The other page remained blank. No grand gestures, no dinners, no vacations, not even holding hands in public. 3 years ago, his simple "be my girlfriend" had been enough to capture my heart. Now, it felt like I had wasted years making myself into a pathetic joke. The next morning, I handed in my resignation. Charles, as always, sat in his tailored suit, sipping coffee, barely glancing at me. "I've told you before, Bianca," he said coolly. "Don't make decisions in the heat of the moment. You'll only regret them later." He paused, then added, "The publishing industry isn't what it used to be. Leaving now might not lead to a better opportunity." I didn't respond, only repeating my decision to quit. "Bianca, where will you go if you leave here? I taught you everything you know. I understand your abilities better than anyone else. Without me, no matter where you end up, you'll face pressure." I walked around the desk to stand directly in front of him, forcing him to look up. His irritated expression didn't intimidate me, even though I trembled as I spoke. "Charles, the pain of this breakup is tearing me apart. Why should I stay here, stuck in your shadow, rotting away with nothing but memories?" His brows furrowed instantly. "What nonsense are you spouting?" I knew Charles valued composure. Even in our most intimate moments, I had never allowed myself to lose control, always playing the role of the poised, rational woman he expected. I had been the woman he wanted, collected, discerning. He likely believed that as long as he offered money, I'd leave quietly without causing a scene. But now he seemed to sense something different in my demeanor. Narrowing his eyes, he studied me carefully. "Bianca," he said, his voice laced with disbelief, "you didn't actually fall in love with me, did you? We were together for mutual benefit. I thought you understood that. After all, considering your looks, education, and family background, you're just not on my level." I clenched my fists, teeth grinding in anger. "Then why did you choose me?" He responded without hesitation, almost casually. "You have a great body." I froze, stunned. That was it? I had believed he admired me, maybe even loved me, but couldn't openly show it due to company policies forbidding workplace relationships. Instead, it turned out that the only value I had to him was my physical appearance. In his eyes, we had merely been using each other. I had thought being abandoned by Charles would feel like a fatal blow, like a knife driven through my heart, but I was wrong. He didn't end me instantly. He wounded me deeply, pulling the blade out only to stab again, leaving me bruised, battered, and barely hanging on. Yet I didn't die. The sound of the fountain outside the office building was loud, the music blaring. I stepped into the cascading water, screaming, "Charles, you're a bastard!" I dropped to my knees, my fists pounding against the ground, teeth clenched as I swore to myself, "Bianca, get up." I made a vow then and there. I would crush this man who had belittled and underestimated me. By the time I staggered halfway home, drenched and feverish, someone helped me into a car. I couldn't remember their face, only that they smelled clean and comforting. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. The doctor informed me that a man in his 30s had brought me in, paid my bill, and even ordered breakfast for me before leaving a note alongside the cash in my wallet. "Thank you, stranger." The first step in my plan for revenge was to formally resign from Land Publishing. When I handed in my resignation, Charles looked at me as if I were a fool. His expression seemed to say, "What can someone as insignificant as you accomplish without me?" I was determined to prove him wrong. For 3 years, I had allowed myself to be a mere backdrop in his story. But I wasn't going to remain in the shadows forever. After quitting, I didn't rush to find another job. Instead, I focused on transforming myself. Charles had always preferred conservative women, and after we started dating, I had stopped wearing vibrant dresses and makeup. I had nearly forgotten that in college, I was known for my skill with cosmetics. I rediscovered that part of myself. Tall with well-defined features, pale skin, and long, freshly curled hair, I slipped into a custom-made, pale blue gown with delicate tassels. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who was sexy and confident. In that moment, I realized something profound. Love makes you humble, but reclaiming yourself makes you powerful. Once I was ready, I didn't send out resumes. Instead, I walked straight into the most prestigious office building in Manhattan, the headquarters of Star Publishing. Known for its massive resources and backed by a real estate conglomerate, it far surpassed the strength of my previous employer. "Hello," I said to the receptionist. "Could you let Editor-in-Chief Ryan know that Bianca is here?" "Thank you." I handed over my business card. What no one knew was that for the past 3 months, I had been in contact with Star Publishing. They had offered me a role as vice editor-in-chief with a salary double what I earned before. Because of Charles, I had declined the offer multiple times. Not anymore. Soon, a secretary arrived to escort me to Ryan's office. I knocked twice before hearing a deep, commanding voice say, "Come in." Star Publishing's offices lived up to their reputation. Ryan's office was spacious and luxurious, easily twice the size of Charles's. I stepped in gracefully, seating myself on a European-style sofa. From the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Ryan at his desk. He was younger and more handsome than I had expected. For 10 minutes, I waited silently, showing no impatience as he finished his work. Finally, he swiveled his chair to face me, raising an eyebrow. "Bianca," I greeted him politely. His sharp, calculating eyes studied me. "I heard about your situation yesterday. So, Bianca, are you finally ready to accept Star Publishing's offer?" "Yes," I replied confidently. "I'm more than ready." Ryan tapped his long, elegant fingers on the desk as if deliberating. "You turned us down multiple times before. I assumed you weren't interested in our company." Smiling slightly, I answered, "Things have changed." "I'm sorry," I replied calmly. "The reasons I declined earlier were personal and had nothing to do with my interest in your company. In fact, I'm very interested in Star Publishing." "Really?" he asked nonchalantly, his tone making it clear he wanted a convincing answer. I knew that if my response didn't satisfy him, I could lose this chance. After all, being turned down repeatedly wasn't something anyone would take lightly. I studied his expression carefully, thinking about how to respond. A generic answer wouldn't work, and empty flattery would fall flat. What he wanted, I realized, was something authentic and meaningful. After a moment, I said, "Star Publishing. The name alone is captivating." His expression shifted slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he quickly composed himself. He gestured for me to continue. I rose gracefully and walked toward the artwork displayed on the wall, my eyes landing on Van Gogh's The Starry Night. "This painting," I began, "is a river of stars, its constellations brimming with romance and mystery. It's both magical and awe-inspiring. Just like this artwork, the books published by Star Publishing are countless and dazzling. Each one is a unique story, every page a miracle. Novels, poetry, science, nonfiction, romance, mystery, and suspense. Together, they create a brilliant galaxy of knowledge and imagination. That's why I believe the name Star Publishing is perfect. I would find it deeply rewarding to work at such a remarkable company." He listened silently, a faint smile curling his lips. "That's quite poetic," he said. "So, what kind of changes do you think Star Publishing will see with your edition?" For the next 10 minutes, I spoke with confidence, laying out my ideas and vision. He listened attentively, occasionally nodding. My voice was steady, filled with assurance. "Your ideas are strong," he said finally. "But do you think they'll work?" "We can only know by trying," I replied firmly. "And if they don't, I'm ready to try again. I believe there's nothing I can't achieve. If you need my word on it, I'll swear to it." He studied me for a long moment, his calm gaze unwavering before he shook his head. "No need. I believe you can make it happen." His words struck me like a jolt. It had been so long since anyone had said they believed in me. With Charles, no matter how well I performed, it was never enough. My best was always met with indifference or criticism. Aside from the terms we discussed, do you have any other conditions? He asked, snapping me back to the moment. I nodded. Yes, 3. First, I'll bring in a group of talented authors and personally draft contracts that ensure their rights are protected. Second, my joining Star Publishing will remain confidential for now. Third, ... I lifted my head to meet his gaze directly, my voice unwavering. I will not engage in any personal relationships with the editor-in-chief. My previous experience with Charles had taught me a hard lesson, and I wasn't about to repeat it. He raised an eyebrow, his expression faintly amused as he scanned me up and down. Sign the contract, he said. You can start tomorrow. A quiet sigh of relief escaped me. I stepped forward, taking the pen and leaning slightly over the desk to sign the agreement. As I wrote, I could feel his gaze on me, steady and assessing. I reminded myself that choosing to embrace my true self meant learning to handle all kinds of scrutiny, whether it was admiring or critical. Then I heard his voice, low and melodic. You're impressive. Why did Charles let you go? I paused briefly, lifting my hair with one hand as I met his eyes with a small smile. Maybe because he didn't have your vision. He couldn't see that I'm an exceptional employee. His gaze remained fixed on me, his fingers interlocked as he leaned forward slightly. You're confident, he said, his tone carrying a hint of admiration. I respect that confidence, and I believe you won't disappoint me. Thank you, I replied, sliding the signed contract back to him. He glanced at my signature before commenting offhandedly, nice handwriting. Thank you, Ryan, I said, preparing to leave. If there's nothing else, I'll head back to prepare for tomorrow. He nodded but added, just one more thing. I'm not Ryan. My stunned expression must have been priceless, because his lips twitched in amusement, barely suppressing a smile. I realized to my utter embarrassment that I hadn't been speaking to the editor-in-chief, Ryan, at all. The man I had been addressing was Zach, the CEO of the entire company. Despite the awkward revelation, I kept my composure. I greeted Zach professionally whenever I saw him in the office, maintaining a seamless demeanor. Later, I learned that Zach was 29 years old, had taken over his family's real estate empire, and served as president of the company. Star Publishing was his late mother's passion project, and when she passed, his father had planned to sell it. But Zach, determined to preserve her legacy, took the reins as CEO himself. When I had complimented Star Publishing during my interview, Zach must have found it amusing, since the name had a deeply personal origin. The night he was born, the sky was filled with stars, inspiring his mother's choice. Knowing this now made my earlier speech feel both embarrassing and strangely serendipitous. Determined to prove my worth, I threw myself into my work with tenfold energy and enthusiasm. Over the next month, I upheld every promise I'd made during the interview, delivering results that quickly earned me respect across the company. One day, Ryan, the actual editor-in-chief, approached me. "I've always believed in your potential," he said, "and now you've proven that you're capable of carrying the weight of Star Publishing on your own." "I'm sorry," I replied calmly. "I declined before due to personal reasons, not because I lacked interest in your company. In fact, I've always admired Star Publishing." "Really?" he asked, his tone casual but probing. I knew he expected a thoughtful answer, and anything less might cost me this opportunity. Being rejected repeatedly wasn't something anyone would take lightly. I paused, carefully considering how to respond. Flattery would be meaningless, and generic responses wouldn't impress him. He wanted sincerity. After a moment, I said, "Star Publishing. The name itself is inspiring." His expression flickered briefly, showing a hint of surprise before returning to his composed demeanor. He motioned for me to continue. I stood and walked toward the artwork on the wall, my gaze settling on Van Gogh's The Starry Night. "This painting," I began, "depicts a river of stars, teeming with mystery and wonder. It's enchanting and awe-inspiring. Similarly, the books Star Publishing produces are like those stars, countless and brilliant. Each one tells a unique story, weaving a galaxy of knowledge and imagination. Novels, poetry, nonfiction, suspense, romance. Each piece contributes to a luminous constellation of creativity. That's why I think the name Star Publishing is perfect. It would be an honor to work in such a visionary company." He observed me quietly, a faint smile playing on his lips. "That's beautifully said. So, what kind of impact do you think your edition will bring to Star Publishing?" For the next 10 minutes, I outlined my ideas with confidence, speaking clearly and passionately. He listened attentively, occasionally nodding in agreement, his expression thoughtful. "Your ideas are strong," he said finally, "but do you think they'll work?" "I won't know until I try," I replied, "and if they don't, I'll adapt and improve. I'm determined to succeed. If you need reassurance, I can promise you that." He regarded me for a long moment before shaking his head. "No need. I believe in your potential." His words struck me deeply. It had been so long since anyone had said they believed in me. Charles had never offered such validation. No matter how hard I worked, it was never enough. "Aside from the terms we've discussed, do you have any additional conditions?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes, 3. First, I'll bring in a talented roster of authors and personally handle their contracts to ensure their rights are protected. Second, I'd like my transition to Star Publishing to remain confidential for now. Third, ... I met his gaze firmly. I won't engage in personal relationships with the editor-in-chief. My past with Charles had been a lesson I wasn't willing to repeat. His brow arched slightly, and his gaze swept over me with mild amusement. "Sign the contract," he said. "You can start tomorrow." Relief washed over me as I leaned forward to sign the document, feeling his eyes on me as I wrote. Choosing to stay true to myself meant accepting scrutiny, whether it was approving or critical. Then his voice, deep and melodic, broke the silence. "You're impressive. Why did Charles let you go?" I paused briefly, lifting my gaze with a faint smile. "Maybe because he couldn't see what you see, that I'm an exceptional employee." His eyes sparkled with faint admiration as he leaned forward. "You're confident. I respect that. I trust you won't disappoint me." "Thank you," I replied, sliding the contract back to him. He glanced at it briefly before commenting, "Nice handwriting." "Thank you, Ryan," I said. "If there's nothing else, I'll head out and prepare for tomorrow." He nodded but added, "Just one more thing. I'm not Ryan." Stunned, my expression must have betrayed me because his lips twitched in amusement. Only later did I realize I hadn't been speaking to Ryan, the editor-in-chief, but Zach, the CEO of Star Publishing. Despite the initial embarrassment, I maintained my composure. I greeted Zach professionally whenever I saw him at the office and focused on proving my worth. Within weeks, I poured my energy into my new role, earning the respect of my colleagues. Months later, Ryan, the real editor-in-chief, approached me. "You've exceeded all expectations," he said. "I always knew you had the potential to lead Star Publishing someday." Soon after, Ryan, battling late-stage cancer, entered hospice care. Following his recommendation and with Zach's approval, I was promoted to editor-in-chief. Not long after my promotion, Charles invited me to dinner. I wasn't surprised by the invitation and accepted without hesitation. As I sat across from him, I noticed the subtle surprise in his eyes as he took in my appearance. "Bianca, it's been a while. You've changed a lot," he said. "People change," I replied, with a polite smile. We exchanged pleasantries before he poured me a glass of wine. "I heard you joined Star Publishing," he said casually. "Are you an assistant editor or a managing editor?" "Managing editor," I replied with a smile. He nodded. "Star Publishing is a big company. Managing editors don't have much influence, but the pay is good. Keep working hard, and maybe one day you'll move up to deputy editor." I raised my glass in silent acknowledgement, but didn't respond. After a few bites of his meal, he set his utensils down and leaned forward. "The new editor-in-chief at Star Publishing has poached several of my authors," he said. I smirked inwardly, realizing this was his true reason for inviting me. "So you're treating me to dinner to discuss the new editor-in-chief?" I asked, my tone light but pointed. He smiled. "Given our history, is that so unreasonable?" "Our history?" I echoed, meeting his gaze. His tone softened. Bianca, I know you're angry with me, and I'm sorry. I never understood how much you cared until I found this. He placed my diary on the table. I read it and realized how much I hurt you. I made a mistake. I looked at the diary, the memories flooding back. Despite his apology, his arrogance lingered in his suggestion that he could offer me an opportunity. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze with quiet strength. Actually, I said, sliding my business card across the table, you already know the new editor-in-chief. Charles froze as he picked up the card, his expression shifting from disbelief to discomfort. Rising gracefully, I smiled. Maybe someone you underestimated has strengths that surpass yours. Without waiting for a response, I walked away, leaving him behind. I replied calmly, I declined before due to personal reasons, not because of any lack of interest in Star Publishing. On the contrary, I've always admired the company. Is that so? He asked, his tone casual but inquisitive. I understood that he expected a well-thought-out response. Having been rejected multiple times, he likely wanted reassurance. I chose my words carefully, knowing flattery would fall flat and cliches wouldn't satisfy him. After a moment of reflection, I said, Star Publishing, the name itself carries inspiration. His expression flickered with a hint of surprise before returning to his composed demeanor. He gestured for me to elaborate. I stood and approached the artwork adorning the wall, my gaze settling on Van Gogh's The Starry Night. This painting, I began, captures a river of stars, teeming with mystery and wonder. It's mesmerizing and awe-inspiring. Similarly, the books Star Publishing produces are like those stars, countless and brilliant. Each book tells a unique story, creating a vast constellation of knowledge and creativity. Novels, poetry, nonfiction, suspense, romance, they all shine together like a galaxy. That's why I believe the name Star Publishing is perfect. It would be an honor to contribute to such a visionary organization. He watched me closely, a faint smile gracing his lips. That's beautifully articulated. So, what kind of impact do you think your addition will bring to Star Publishing? I confidently outlined my thoughts and strategies for the next 10 minutes. He listened intently, occasionally nodding in agreement, his expression contemplative. Your ideas are promising, he finally said, but do you believe they'll succeed? We won't know until we try, I replied firmly. And if they don't, I'll find ways to make them work. I'm determined to achieve results. If you need a guarantee, I'm ready to give you my word. He regarded me thoughtfully before shaking his head. No need. I trust you have the potential to deliver. His words struck a chord. It had been so long since anyone had shown such confidence in me. For years, Charles had made me feel inadequate, no matter how much I achieved. Do you have any additional conditions aside from the terms we've discussed? He asked. I nodded. Yes, 3. First, I'll bring in a talented roster of authors and personally oversee their contracts to ensure their interests are protected. Second, I'd like my transition to Star Publishing to remain confidential for now. And third, I paused to meet his gaze. I will not engage in a personal relationship with the editor-in-chief. My experience with Charles had taught me a hard lesson I wasn't eager to repeat. His brow lifted slightly, and his eyes glimmered with mild amusement. "Sign the contract," he said. "You can start tomorrow." Relieved, I leaned forward to sign the document, feeling his gaze on me as I wrote. Choosing to stay true to myself meant accepting scrutiny, whether it was admiring or critical. Then he spoke again, his voice low and resonant. "You're impressive. Why did Charles let you go?" I paused briefly, lifting my gaze with a faint smile. "Perhaps because he didn't see what you do, that I'm exceptional." His eyes sparkled with faint admiration. "You're confident, and I respect that. I trust you won't let me down." "Thank you," I said, sliding the signed contract back to him. As he scanned my name, he added, almost absent-mindedly, "Nice handwriting." "Thank you, Ryan," I replied. "If there's nothing else, I'll head out to prepare for tomorrow." He nodded, but then added, "Just one more thing. I'm not Ryan." Stunned, my expression must have given me away, because his lips twitched in amusement. Only later did I learn that I hadn't been speaking to Ryan, the editor-in-chief, but Zach, the CEO of Star Publishing. Despite my initial embarrassment, I focused on excelling in my role. Within months, I had proven myself and gained the admiration of my colleagues. My confidence grew with each success, and I threw myself into the work. 3 years later, Star Publishing officially went public. Shortly after, the company launched its acquisition strategy, targeting Land Publishing, the company where Charles worked. During a meeting, Zach reviewed my acquisition proposal, his tone deliberate. "Charles, 34 years old, editor-in-chief of Land Publishing. His father is the CEO, and his mother is a corporate executive. His former fiancée is the daughter of a company manager. Their engagement was arranged to secure a $30 million investment for Land Publishing, which was struggling at the time." I couldn't help but admire Zach's thoroughness. Even I hadn't known some of these details. "Charles is talented," I said evenly, "but his father's rigidity has stifled many of his ideas, limiting the company's growth." Zach nodded thoughtfully. "I've heard Land Publishing is Charles's lifeblood. If we acquire it, does that mean we take control of his heart?" My heart skipped a beat. What did he know? Zach's sharp gaze settled on me. "What's your relationship with Charles?" I steadied myself before replying, "He's just an ex-boyfriend." "You joined Star Publishing to get back at him?" he pressed. "Of course not. I'm here for myself," I said firmly. "I refuse to remain in anyone's shadow, treated like disposable trash. I know my worth." Zach chuckled, nodding in approval. You've always had a clear sense of self. Your proposal is excellent. I have no objections. As he signed the document, I hesitated. Finally, I asked, Ryan once mentioned that you recommended me. Did you know me before? A flicker of amusement crossed his face. 3 years ago, I saw you sign Diana, the suspense author, to Land Publishing. I was sitting right behind you in a restaurant. You were passionate, persuasive. I was so impressed, I almost followed you. Embarrassed, I ducked my head, stammering an apology. As I turned to leave, Zach leaned forward, his voice dropping. Bianca, when you interviewed, you made 3 conditions. Do you remember the third? Yes, I answered hesitantly. No personal relationships with the editor-in-chief. He leaned closer, his voice soft and magnetic. I'm not the editor-in-chief. Would it be okay to date me? I froze, my papers slipping from my hands. Zach smirked. Think about it. You can refuse, but I believe no exceptional woman like you would turn down an equally exceptional man. Flustered, I fled. Later, Star Publishing successfully acquired Land Publishing. On the day of the contract signing, Charles sat across from me, no longer arrogant, but composed. I underestimated you, Bianca, he admitted. After signing the contract, he caught up with me. Bianca, he asked quietly, do you still hate me? After a moment of reflection, I shook my head. No, I don't hate you. Without you, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Charles hesitated, then asked, do you still— I don't love you anymore, I interrupted, smiling with a calmness devoid of regret. The moment I realized you didn't love me, my feelings for you faded. Bianca, it's not like that. Charles began, but I cut him off as my phone buzzed. Sorry, I need to take this, I said, answering the call right in front of him. A smooth, deep voice came through the line. Did you sign the contract? Yes, it's done. You must be hungry. I'm waiting outside. Let's grab dinner. Okay, I'll be right out, I replied, hanging up the call. Turning back to Charles, I studied him for a moment before speaking. Charles, when I was with you, why didn't you love me? His face clouded with a mix of emotions. He opened his mouth as if to respond, but remained silent. Just then, I noticed someone entering the room. He paused at the door, leaning casually with his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on me. Instead of walking over, he waited quietly. I nodded at him and then gracefully stepped around Charles. As I walked away, I caught snippets of whispers from my former colleagues behind me. Who's that man? You don't know? That's the CEO of Star Publishing. Do you think Bianca became editor-in-chief because of him? I scoffed inwardly at their speculations, unbothered by their gossip. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through the murmurs. Bianca is a woman of strength, determination, and excellence. She doesn't need to rely on anyone. My steps faltered briefly, and I smiled faintly, understanding his intent. Without looking back, I raised my hand in acknowledgement and called out, "Hey, stranger." Zach's composed expression flickered with surprise for a split second before his smile softened. "What are you in the mood for?" he asked gently. I linked my arm with his, casually smiling back. "With you, I can eat anything." Later, while dining at a cozy Western restaurant, Zach reached for his wallet to settle the bill. As he pulled it out, a folded note slipped to the floor. Curious, I picked it up and unfolded it. The words scrawled on it read, "Thank you, stranger." It dawned on me then. The man who had rescued me and taken me to the hospital on that fateful day was Zach. And somehow I realized he must have known the truth all along. Life is a winding journey, full of unexpected encounters. We all hope to meet the right person somewhere along the way, but fate doesn't reveal their identity from the start. That's okay, though. As long as we keep moving forward, eventually that person will find their place on our path.